Big E suffers a serious injury on SmackDown. Pete Dunne makes his main roster debut under a new name. We have an update when it comes to Cody Rhodes and his WWE future, plus plans for Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38. All this and more in today's WWE news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into today. So let's start off talking about some really unfortunate news when it comes to Big E, who has suffered a broken neck last night during last night's episode of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox. Big E suffered a broken neck during last night's WWE SmackDown on Fox episode. As noted previously, SmackDown saw Ridge Holland and Sheamus defeat Kofi Kingston and Big E in tag team action in a match that saw Pete Dunne make his main roster debut. We'll speak about that in a second. He was actually influential in the finish of that match. But there was a spot during the match where Holland tossed Big E at ringside with a belly-to-belly suplex. Unfortunately, he dropped him pretty much directly on his head. Now, medics immediately came over and tended to Big E while Kofi Kingston finished the match. As can be seen on social media with fans in attendance, Big E was stretchered out by medics. He later took to Twitter and posted a selfie video to announce that he had suffered a broken neck during the spot with Holland. This is what he had to say, quote, "I can't thank all of you beautiful people enough for all of your concern and your messages. It's very heartwarming. I can move all my digits. You see that? That's nice. It's always a good thing. Strength feels fine. But unfortunately, right now, they tell me my neck is broken. So there's that. But once again, thank you, everybody. I'm going to be all right. I'll be good. Don't worry. Go to sleep. Don't worry about old me. But for real, thank you. And I appreciate all of you for real." Now, there's no word yet on the severity of Big E's injury, but we should know more soon. And of course, once we do know more soon, we'll keep you updated. You can see the screen grab of him doing the video there. Now, when it comes to what the original plans were for Big E heading into WrestleMania, because just the injury itself is debilitating anyway, and it's incredibly alarming. Thankfully, he seems to be in good spirits. Again, he can move his hands and his limbs, that's one. Whenever you have a broken neck or a neck injury, is to be able to move your extremities, not have tingling, numbness, all that kind of stuff, lack of strength, also nerve damage, you name it. So the fact that he's saying that he can move his hands and his extremities and he doesn't have issues when it comes to strength, that's a good thing. When it comes to what his plans were for WrestleMania, reportedly, WWE had plans for the New Day to reunite at WrestleMania 38 for a six-man tag team match, but now, of course, that bout is up in the air due to Big E's broken neck. It was later revealed, as I mentioned, that Big E, when he stretched out from ringside arena, that he legitimately suffered a broken neck. In an update, WWE had called up Pete Dunne, which we'll speak about in a second, to SmackDown for a six-man WrestleMania feud, according to PW Insider. The plan was to do Sheamus, Holland, and Dunne versus Big E, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods, reuniting the New Day at WrestleMania. Now, that six-man tag team match is reportedly up in the air due to Big E's broken neck. Of course, it remains to be seen how long he's going to be out of action for, and if WWE will go the standard tag team route if he's unable to compete at WrestleMania. I say if. It's very highly likely he's not going to be able to compete at WrestleMania. You don't break your neck and then return to the ring, 2 or 3 weeks later. It just doesn't happen. So Big E is pretty much out of WrestleMania. When it comes to Xavier Woods, of course, he's been out of action since suffering a muscle tear during the street fight against SmackDown Tag Team Champions the Usos on January 7th. Woods noted then he was expected to be out of action for 4 to 6 weeks and recently indicated that he was close to making his return. Again, there's no real update as to what the situation is when it comes to Big E and the severity of his broken neck. PW Insider has reported that there was a lot of backstage concern over Big E's condition, but that was somewhat alleviated when he posted his video on Twitter. He's been taken to a local hospital in Birmingham, Alabama for further testing. Again, if we hear more about it, we'll let you know, but it sucks. I mean, it absolutely sucks. I mean, Big E just in general recently, right? He goes from being WWE champion, drops the bout on day one on January 1st of this year to Brock Lesnar, was pinned in that match. Then it was very, very evident he'd been dropped and relegated back to the mid-card. For whatever reason, WWE didn't feel like he carried the ball well enough when he was WWE champion, frankly. Was he given a good enough opportunity? Probably not. And it just goes to show, once again, WWE can't book a babyface champion, and they struggle to create new stars. And Big E then gets dropped to the mid-card. On top of that, then he gets drafted or traded to SmackDown, where he's put back in a tag team. And now, this once WWE champion, main event level competitor is out of action with a broken neck. As far as people blaming Ridge Holland, I want to say accidents happen. It's unfortunate that, look, suplexes are dangerous. I think people don't really realize, because we get so accustomed to seeing them. Suplexes, German suplexes, belly-to-belly suplexes are dangerous. They require an extreme amount of strength from the person doing them and popping the hips and throwing them over the head. They require an extreme amount of agility from the person taking them as well, because they have to, go over the person's head. And to do a spot like that on the outside, yes, it's routine, but it's dangerous also. And I mean, looking at it, it kind of looked like, it looked somewhat like certainly that the spot was Big E was going for his dive, his sort of spear through the ropes dive to the outside of the ring. Ridge Holland ducked that, and Big E just landed flat on his back, so he had the wind taken out of him anyway. So I don't know if Big E was properly able to necessarily take the bump properly and jump as he was taking it. On top of that, Ridge Holland, I don't think, had the best grip on him either, and it just all led to a really dangerous spot and a really horrible, horrible injury. Neck injuries are no joke. People's lives have changed because of neck injuries. People's careers have ended because of neck injuries. Ask Stone Cold Steve Austin, ask Tyson Kidd, ask someone like Droz, who obviously was paralyzed because of a neck injury. Tyson Kidd's very lucky to be alive, let alone wrestling, because of the neck injury he suffered in his dark match against Samoa Joe. So this is no joke. The massive concern I had as soon as I saw it is, that's a big guy to be dropped on his head. It's one thing to have a small guy, but a big guy like Big E, who's closing in on 300 pounds, that's a big guy to land on the top of his head. Thankfully, he's a big muscular guy, so he'll have a thick neck, which probably would have protected him somewhat. I mean, Tyson Kidd, I speak about him before. Tyson Kidd has said several times, if he hadn't had the sort of muscular neck that he has, doctors told him, you could absolutely very, very easily have been dead. It's that serious. So fingers crossed, hopefully. Sometimes with neck injuries, with broken necks, as it were, you can be out of action for a relatively short amount of time. I say relatively, not 3 weeks, but it can be maybe 3 months or something like that, depending on the severity of the injury. But sometimes you can be out for a year, 18 months. We just don't know right now. Again, thankfully, it looks to be that Big E, has movement in his hands and his legs and doesn't have any strength loss. Time will tell, but it sucks, and it literally could not happen to a nicer guy. I mean, by all accounts, one of, if not the nicest guy in the business, and it absolutely sucks, especially this close to WrestleMania. But just a neck injury in general, it absolutely sucks, and prayers go out to him, and hopefully he recovers quickly and it's not too bad. Speaking of Pete Dunne, we spoke about this several times in the video, because it was during this segment in which Big E broke his neck. But former WWE NXT superstar Pete Dunne is now known as Butch on the main roster. I'm not making that up. That's real. That's real. Pete Dunne called up to the main roster. Everyone went, okay, interesting. That's cool. Pete Dunne's coming to the main roster. What's he going to be doing? He's going to be in a faction with Sheamus and Ridge Holland. Okay. I can get behind that. That's fun. That seems interesting. That seems like good television. He's going to have a name change. He's going to have a what? He's going to have a name change. And then alarm bells start ringing, because you're thinking of some of these recent names they've done in WWE. Doudrop. Do I have to go further than Doudrop? Butch. As in Bushwhacker Butch. What on earth? What on earth? What on earth? Now, Sheamus and Ridge Holland introduced Butch during a backstage segment to hype their match against Kofi Kingston and Big E. Michael Cole referred to Butch as another one of Sheamus's protégés and noted that they are longtime friends. Several times during the match, they mentioned that this was, he may be known by a different name. They said that several times. He may be known by a different name, but he's just known as Butch. He's known as Butch. He might be known as someone else. You might know him as someone else. And when I heard this, I thought to myself, this is the kind of creative that's why people like Adam Cole left the company. This is the kind of creative why Kyle O'Reilly left the company. That's what it is. They looked at that and said, these guys from NXT, whether it's Adam Cole, Pete Dunne, Kyle O'Reilly, you name it, they looked at stuff like that, and some of the stuff that Adam Cole was getting pitched, you could be a manager for Keith Lee, and maybe you should cut your hair, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's that kind of creative. They've got an entire creative team, a team of people, and they thought this was the best idea. And don't get me wrong, to be paired with Sheamus and Rich Holland is a good idea. Butch, why? Why? Now, Fightful was first to break this story. Fightful Select, Sean Ross Sapp, said that they were told throughout the day that, quote, something very dumb was happening on last night's SmackDown, with numerous people chiming in that it would be a name change for a star many people already knew. There were wrestlers outside the company who knew of the name change as far back as yesterday, and were speculating it could be a bushwhacker's rib because Luke is Rich Holland's real name. Another former WWE name believed to be based on Butch, believed it was based on Butch from the Little Rascals, the 1950s version. We're told, or Fightful were told, that this is planned to be an official call-up leading into the night, as there were plans for Butch, Rich Holland, and Sheamus to take on the New Day at WrestleMania. Production, again, was instructed not to refer to him as Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne, of course, re-signed with WWE last summer, and this is what you get. This is what you get. Now, I know some people will be saying, obviously, they'll be saying, well, it doesn't matter. You said Doudrop. You had a big thing about Doudrop, but now everyone calls her Doudrop, and now she feels like a Doudrop, and now, no. Piper Niven is still a better name. There are so many examples. The Viking Experience. Do we need to carry on? WWE's track record name, and before people start saying, oh, you just get angry because you don't like change, right? And not that many people knew of him as Pete Dunne. Oh, stop it. That thing is ridiculous. And they'll go, yeah, but 2 million people watch SmackDown, only 500,000 people watch NXT, so people don't know who Pete Dunne is. Well, Pete Dunne's been around in the WWE universe for however many years. 5 years at this point? They know who Pete Dunne is. They do. They know who Pete Dunne is. And it's just a dumb name, and it's dumb creative. And again, I'm not opposed to the faction. I like the faction. I like the group. The name change sucks. Oh, my goodness. Absolutely sucks. What more needs to be said about that? Now, again, good for Pete Dunne working on the main roster. And like with anything, you just have to be like, well, I've got to try and make it work, right? I've got to try and make it work. I don't like the name, but I'll try and make it work. Make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. But God, it's bad. Oh, he's so bad. It's such a bad name. And it's just ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. But that's what happens. I mean, it's a Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard name. That's just what it is. I am 100% sure that Creative had a load of other names pitched for him, and then Vince McMahon went, no, I don't like him. Well, let's call him Butch. That sounds like a British name. Butch. Yes. Oh, come on. It's just ridiculous. It really is. Let's talk about Cody Rhodes. There's some more discussion about Cody Rhodes' WWE future, which frankly I'm getting quite tired about. The Cody Rhodes WWE situation is said to be back up in the air. The latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that WWE had creative plans set up for a surprise Rhodes debut to happen imminently, as in the next week or so, with Rhodes set to face Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 38. However, WWE Creative was reportedly told this week to hold off working on the Rhodes versus Rollins creative until Rhodes signs his WWE contract, because they had already worked on the creative, but then had to stop when they weren't sure if Rhodes was returning. Rhodes' WWE return is not a dead deal, according to the report. Upper-level WWE sources have noted they don't know what happened with the Rhodes talks, and it's not a sure thing that his return has fallen through, as talks were ongoing during the week, and he could still debut imminently. It's believed that Rhodes has had offers from different places. There's a feeling within WWE that Rhodes not signing a contract to return is either him angling for a better deal with the idea of using WrestleMania 38 as leverage, or the deal is not going to happen, or he's playing a Brian Pillman game with the company. Now, of course, Pillman was able to obtain his WCW release by convincing them he could really play up his loose cannon gimmick if he were let go. But then he made some appearances for ECW and started a bidding war between WCW and WWE, then ended up with WWE, whereas in reality, he actually wanted to go back to WCW. Now, regarding WWE wanting to do Rollins versus Rhodes at WrestleMania 38, sources have confirmed that this was the plan for Rhodes' return feud. WWE would have to pull the trigger on the program soon, ideally at Monday's Raw in Jacksonville, if Rhodes was close enough to agree on a contract. If things weren't close enough by the March 14 Raw, WWE would have to start setting Rollins up in a different direction for WrestleMania. The plan was to hold off any Rollins WrestleMania build until after the Raw Tag Team Titles Triple Threat match, which aired this past Monday and saw RK Bro recapture the championships. Now that tag team feud is over, it's time to get Rollins' WrestleMania feud going before they run out of time. So basically, nobody really knows what's going on with Cody Rhodes at the moment, and I think that's the way he likes it. Has the discussion kind of died down? Massively. Absolutely massively, and the iron is not as hot as it was a couple of weeks ago. That is 100% accurate. What's going to happen with Cody Rhodes? I have no idea at this point. I wouldn't be shocked. I really wouldn't be shocked. I was thinking this the other day. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a Brian Pillman situation. And I know sometimes as pro wrestling fans we get kind of so jaded when it comes to stuff like it's a work or it's a shoot, it's a work. I think him leaving AEW was legit. But I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked if later it comes out that only Tony Khan and Cody Rhodes knew that he was going to come back. And he did legitimately not have a contract. And he did legitimately walk away from negotiations. But it was all a big ruse for him eventually to come back or something like that. The problem is that if you do that, you can only really do it once. And, when you work an entire company, that has ramifications, right? With people backstage, people can't trust you anymore. So I just don't know. Is he going to go to WWE? It still seems pretty surreal. The fact they're holding off Rollins and watching Raw this past Monday gave you an indication that certainly the plan was for Rollins versus Rhodes. Monday's the key, I think. I really do think Monday's the key on that one. And if Rhodes doesn't show up, I don't think he will until at the very least till after WrestleMania. But then I don't think he will in general. Where does he then go? Does he go back to AEW? They would want to have him back. Does he go to Ring of Honor and Tony Khan's new version of Ring of Honor and book it or whatever? I just don't know. And I don't think anyone does. And like I said, I think that's how Cody Rhodes likes it right now. We have an update when it comes to Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kevin Owens angle, segment, match, fight, whatever you want to call it, at WrestleMania 38. WWE Hall of Famer Stone Cold Steve Austin is reportedly working on his cardio as he prepares to get physical with Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 38. Now, there had been rumors on Austin coming out of retirement to wrestle Owens at WrestleMania 38, but WWE has officially announced that Austin will confront Owens in a special edition of the KO show scheduled for night one of WrestleMania 38, known as WrestleMania Saturday. While WWE officials wanted Austin to do a match, the Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that instead it's going to be a fight sequence and not a match. The match was changed as Austin agreed to do the segment with a fight sequence but not the match. Word is that Austin has been upping his cardio work as of late. The current plan for the segment at WrestleMania calls for a fight scene and not just a quick Stone Cold Stunner to Owens. It was noted that the segment is planned to consist of more than just a stunner to Owens, but the stunner is the obvious conclusion. There was still talk of doing an angle to lead to the match between Austin and Owens if Austin were to agree to it, but WWE felt like they needed to announce Austin for the card this week and not at a later date. Now, Austin, of course, has got physical several times since retiring in 2003, but WWE is billing this as Austin's return to the ring or something like that. I think this is the right way to go. Again, if Stone Cold Steve Austin, I've said this a million times, so I won't repeat myself too much, but if Stone Cold Steve Austin's going to do a match, it should be a 20-minute WrestleMania main event against Roman Reigns, because it's kind of like it's Steve, and again, this isn't a shot at Kevin Owens at all, but to want Stone Cold Steve Austin to return to the ring after nearly 20 years and just to do, a mid-card match, frankly, is a slap in the face. It really is. We're talking about one of, if not the biggest star of all time. One of the biggest draws ever. And I get it's in Dallas, and I get there's no really coming back for it. But if he comes back and puts Roman Reigns over, that's huge. That's bigger than Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, title versus title, because they can do that whenever. They've already done it. They haven't done Roman Reigns versus Stone Cold Steve Austin before, so it's right. And that's why, if I was Steve Austin, of course I would have pushed back on the match and go, no, I'm not going to do that as a match. I'll do it as a fight segment. I don't even know if I'm capable of doing match, but I'll do this sort of fight choreographed thing, and then we'll move on. So I think it's the right call by Stone Cold Steve Austin. A couple of other WrestleMania announcements. SmackDown Tag Team Championship match has been announced for WrestleMania 38. The Usos are going to take on Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs. This was set up last night on SmackDown, and it was a match where if Rick Boogs could defeat Jey Uso in singles action, then Nakamura and Boogs would earn a tag team title match. Boogs went on to defeat Jey and earn the WrestleMania shot, but Jey smashed him in the back with his guitar to end the segment. So this is going to be a match. I think the Usos will probably retain. Frankly, I think the Bloodline's going to stand tall coming out of WrestleMania. I think that's the way that they're going to go. Another match that has already been announced is the Women's Tag Team title match, but reportedly the plan is to make another change to this. The current plan calls for Carmella and Vega to defend their titles in a fatal four-way, according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. The match started out as a standard tag team bout, but Morgan and Ripley were added this past Monday on Raw after defeating the champs in a non-title match. We're not too sure about who this fourth team is scheduled to be. It could be Sonya Deville and Natalya. It could be Shotzi or Shayna Baszler. It's not really been confirmed yet, but we'll wait and see. But reportedly, that is the situation there. Finally, also, there's a note on the expected number of matches for WrestleMania 38. According to WrestleVotes on Twitter, the card is expected to feature around 16 matches. WWE currently has 9 matches announced, plus the KO show with Kevin Owens and Steve Austin. As I mentioned, WrestleVotes on Twitter notes that the source has said to expect up to 7 more matches to be announced. We saw some more announced on SmackDown last night. Whether or not Big E's injury will change that will remain to be seen. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.